The mysterious baby at the vaquero's door. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty courtyard of Marcus Rodriguez's ranch when he discovered the small wicker basket on his doorstep. Inside, wrapped in a beautifully woven Apache blanket, was a baby no more than 6 months old. The child's dark eyes stared up at him with an intensity that seemed almost otherworldly, and around the baby's tiny wrist was a delicate silver bracelet decorated with turquoise stones and strange symbols Marcus had never seen before. Marcus, a weathered vaquero of 35 who had been living alone since his wife Maria died in childbirth 3 years earlier, stood frozen in shock. He had no experience with babies, no idea how to care for such a small, helpless creature. The ranch, located on the border between white settlements and Apache territory in the Arizona Territory of 1885, was isolated and far from any neighbors who might offer assistance. "Sweet Mary," he whispered, carefully lifting the basket and bringing it inside his modest adobe house. The baby made soft cooing sounds, its tiny hands reaching toward Marcus's weathered face. There was no note, no explanation, no clue about where the child had come from or who had left it at his door. Marcus searched the area around his ranch, but found no tracks, no sign of whoever had delivered this mysterious gift. It was as if the baby had simply appeared out of thin air. For 3 days, Marcus struggled desperately to care for the infant. He tried feeding the baby goats milk, sugar water, even mashed beans, but nothing seemed to satisfy the child's hunger. The baby cried constantly, its small body growing weaker by the hour. Marcus paced the floor night and day, holding the infant close to his chest, singing the only lullaby he remembered from his own childhood. By the 4th morning, Marcus was exhausted and terrified. The baby had barely eaten anything and seemed to be fading away before his eyes. In desperation, he saddled his horse and prepared to ride to the nearest town to find a doctor or a nursing mother who might be able to help. But as he stepped out of his house with the baby wrapped carefully in his arms, a figure emerged from the desert heat like a mirage. Walking toward his ranch was an Apache woman, her long black hair braided with feathers and silver ornaments. She wore traditional buckskin clothing decorated with intricate beadwork, and her dark eyes held a wisdom that seemed to span centuries. Around her neck hung multiple necklaces of turquoise and bone, marking her as someone of special importance within her tribe. Marcus's hand instinctively moved toward the rifle hanging from his saddle, but something about the woman's calm, purposeful approach made him pause. She raised her hands to show she carried no weapons, and when she spoke, her English was clear and melodious. "I am Aiyana," she said, stopping about 10 feet from Marcus. "I have come for the child." The child? Marcus clutched the baby protectively. "This baby was left at my door. I don't know where it came from." Aiyana's eyes fixed on the infant in Marcus's arms, and her expression grew both tender and serious. "That child is very special. I have seen its future in my dreams. It will become a bridge between our peoples, a symbol of peace in times of great conflict." Marcus studied the woman carefully. He had heard stories of Apache shamans and their supposed ability to see the future, but he had always dismissed such tales as superstition. However, there was something about Aiyana's presence, her calm certainty, that made him hesitate. "You're saying this baby has some kind of destiny?" Marcus asked skeptically. "All children have destinies," Aiyana replied. "But this one will change the course of history between the Apache and the white man. That is why the child was brought to you. You are meant to protect it until the time is right." "Brought to me? By who?" Aiyana was quiet for a moment, her eyes studying the baby's face with intense concentration. Then she noticed something that made her gasp softly. "May I see the bracelet the child wears?" Marcus reluctantly held out the baby's arm, showing the delicate silver ornament with its turquoise stones and mysterious symbols. Aiyana's hands trembled as she examined the bracelet without touching it. "These symbols, they tell a story. This child was born on Apache sacred ground, during the night of the sacred moon. The bracelet marks the baby as one who belongs to both worlds, white and Apache. That's impossible. This child looks. Marcus paused, realizing he hadn't really examined the baby's features carefully. In the bright desert sunlight, he could see that while the infant had dark hair and eyes, its skin was lighter than he had first noticed. The facial features seemed to combine Apache and European characteristics. "Your brother Carlos," Aiyana said suddenly. "He was a trader who often came to Apache lands. He married an Apache woman named Singing Bird 3 years ago." Marcus's heart stopped. His younger brother Carlos had indeed been a trader, and he had disappeared into Apache territory years ago. Marcus had assumed he was dead, killed in one of the countless skirmishes between settlers and Apache warriors. "Carlos, he's alive?" "He was alive when this child was born," Aiyana said gently. "But he and his wife died in a fever that swept through our village 2 moons ago. Before she died, Singing Bird made me promise to bring the baby to safety, to find someone who would love and protect it." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. This baby was his nephew, the son of his lost brother and an Apache woman. The child represented everything that was complicated and controversial about relationships between the two cultures. But why bring the baby to me in secret? Why not just come and explain? Because the child would not be safe if both sides knew of its mixed heritage. There are those among my people who would see it as an abomination, and there are whites who would kill it simply for having Apache blood. Marcus looked down at the baby in his arms, his brother's son, his own flesh and blood. The infant had stopped crying and was looking up at him with those impossibly wise dark eyes. "The baby is dying," Marcus said quietly. "I've tried everything, but I can't get it to eat." Aiyana stepped closer, her movements careful and non-threatening. "Apache babies need different things than white babies. May I help?" Marcus hesitated. Accepting help from an Apache woman would be seen as scandalous by the white community, but the baby's life hung in the balance. After a moment's internal struggle, he nodded. Aiyana gently took the infant from Marcus's arms and immediately began speaking to it in soft Apache. To Marcus's amazement, the baby immediately calmed and began making happy gurgling sounds. "The child recognizes the language of its mother," Aiyana explained. She pulled a small leather pouch from her clothing and mixed some herbs with water from Marcus's well. "This will help with digestion and provide the nutrients the baby needs." Over the next several hours, Aiyana demonstrated how to prepare proper food for the infant, how to hold it in ways that provided comfort, and how to recognize the baby's different needs. Marcus watched in fascination as she worked with an expertise that seemed almost supernatural. The baby, for the first time since arriving at Marcus's ranch, began eating properly and sleeping peacefully. "You have a gift," Marcus observed as they sat on his porch watching the sunset. The baby slept contentedly in Aiyana's arms. "I have been blessed by the spirits to understand the needs of children," she replied. "It is my calling within my tribe." "What's your calling called?" "You would call me a shaman, though that word doesn't fully capture what I do. I help guide souls through difficult transitions. Birth, death, the spaces in between where people must choose who they will become." As if summoned by their conversation about identity and transitions, the sound of approaching horses interrupted the peaceful evening. A group of 5 riders was approaching Marcus's ranch at full gallop, led by Sheriff Tom Harrison from the nearby town of Dusty Wells. "Rodriguez," Sheriff Harrison called out as the group reined in their horses. "We heard you've got an Apache on your property." Marcus stood up slowly, positioning himself between the sheriff and Aiyana. "She's helping me with a sick baby, Sheriff. No trouble here." Sheriff Harrison's eyes narrowed as he noticed the infant in Aiyana's arms. "That your baby, Rodriguez? Or is this some kind of Apache trick?" "The baby was abandoned at my door. This woman knows how to care for it." "Apache don't abandon babies," growled one of the other riders, a rancher named Bill Hutchins. "This is some kind of setup. She's probably scouting for a raid." Aiyana remained calm despite the hostility surrounding her. She spoke directly to Sheriff Harrison. "I mean no harm. I came only to help the child. That baby looks Apache to me." Hutchins said suspiciously. "Half-breed, maybe." "Rodriguez, you've been consorting with savages." Marcus felt his anger rising. "That's enough, Hutchins. This is my land, and I'll decide who's welcome here. Not when it comes to Apache," Sheriff Harrison said firmly. "We've had 3 ranches attacked this month. Cattle stolen, buildings burned. We can't take chances." The sheriff dismounted and approached Aiyana with his hand resting on his gun. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us for questioning. She hasn't done anything wrong," Marcus protested. "She's been nothing but helpful." "Rodriguez, step aside. This is official business." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus realized that any aggressive move could result in violence that would endanger both Aiyana and the baby. But he also couldn't stand by and watch an innocent woman be taken away simply because of her race. It was at this critical moment that Aiyana did something that surprised everyone present. She gently handed the baby to Marcus and then reached into her leather pouch. For a moment, the men's hands moved toward their weapons, but instead of a weapon, Aiyana pulled out a small object that glinted in the fading sunlight. It was a military medal, a silver star marked with the insignia of the U.S. Army. "This belonged to Captain James Harrison," Aiyana said, looking directly at the sheriff. "Your brother." Sheriff Harrison's face went pale. Where did you get that?" "He gave it to me before he died. I tended to his wounds for 3 days after the Battle of Canyon Diablo." He spoke often of his brother Tom, the sheriff who always tried to do what was right, even when it was difficult. The sheriff stared at the medal in shock. His brother James had been reported missing in action during an Apache campaign 2 years earlier. The Army had never found his body. "James, he's dead. He died with honor, fighting to protect Apache women and children who had been captured by renegades. His last words were about you. He said he hoped you would understand that not all Apache are enemies, just as not all white men are friends." Sheriff Harrison took the medal with trembling hands. He said that the future of this territory depends on good people from both sides learning to trust each other. He asked me to find you someday and tell you that. The group of riders sat in stunned silence. The revelation had completely changed the dynamic of the confrontation. "Sheriff," Marcus said quietly, "this woman has done nothing but help. She saved this baby's life. If your brother trusted her enough to give her his medal." Sheriff Harrison studied Aiyana's face for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Aiyana. It means eternal blossom in my language." "Aiyana, I'm sorry for the hostility. If my brother trusted you, then I suppose I should give you the benefit of the doubt." Bill Hutchins wasn't satisfied. "Tom, you're not seriously going to just let her go because she's got some story about James?" "It's not just a story," the sheriff replied firmly. "This medal, James would never have given it to anyone he didn't trust completely. It was our father's medal from the Civil War." Aiyana nodded gratefully. "Your brother was a good man. He understood that the path to peace requires courage from everyone." As the riders prepared to leave, Sheriff Harrison turned back to Marcus. "Rodriguez, if you need any help with that baby, you let me know. And if anyone gives you trouble about your arrangement here, you send them to me." After the men had ridden away, Marcus and Aiyana sat on the porch in comfortable silence. The baby slept peacefully in Marcus's arms, finally content and healthy. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "I can't raise this baby alone, but the town will never accept you living here permanently." Aiyana smiled. "I don't need to live here permanently. I can visit regularly, help you learn what you need to know. The baby will grow strong under your protection, and when the time is right, he will fulfill his destiny as a bridge between our peoples. And what if people find out about his Apache heritage? Then you will teach him to be proud of both sides of his family. Your brother Carlos was brave enough to love across the boundaries of race and culture. This child is the living proof that such love is possible. Marcus looked down at his nephew, his brother's son, sleeping peacefully in his arms. What should I call him? I don't even know his Apache name. His mother called him Little Wolf in our language, but she also chose an English name for him, hoping that someday he could walk in both worlds. She wanted him to be called Samuel, after the prophet who could speak to God. Samuel Rodriguez. Marcus said, testing the name. It has a good sound. Over the following weeks, Aiyana visited the ranch regularly, teaching Marcus everything he needed to know about caring for Samuel. She showed him which plants could be made into medicine, how to read the weather patterns of the desert, and most importantly, how to honor both the Apache and Mexican traditions that were part of the baby's heritage. The arrangement wasn't without its challenges. Some people in town whispered about Marcus's association with an Apache woman, but Sheriff Harrison's endorsement carried weight, and most folks were willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. As Samuel grew older, he displayed remarkable characteristics that seemed to confirm Aiyana's predictions about his special destiny. He learned languages quickly, picking up Spanish, English, and Apache words with equal ease. He had an intuitive understanding of both horses and people that amazed everyone who met him. Most remarkably, Samuel seemed to have a natural ability to calm conflicts. When tensions arose between different groups, Mexican vaqueros and white cowboys, Apache visitors and townspeople, the presence of the cheerful, curious child somehow made everyone remember their shared humanity. Years later, when Samuel Rodriguez grew up to become a respected translator, mediator, and eventually a territorial judge who helped establish some of the first successful treaties between Apache tribes and the territorial government, people would remember the day an Apache shaman brought a mysterious baby to a lonely vaquero's door. But Marcus and Aiyana always knew that there was no mystery at all. Love had simply found a way to bridge the gap between two worlds, creating something beautiful and new in the process. The baby who had appeared on Marcus's doorstep had indeed been destined for greatness, not because of any supernatural prophecy, but because he had been raised by people who understood that the future belongs to those brave enough to choose understanding over fear.